So everybody who talks about EVs, who works in EVs, you've all probably faced this question 100 times, 1,000 times. Are EVs better for the environment? Yes. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk. No. So I've got a great panel here. We're going to really dig deeper into this topic of the environmental impact. First up, Aaron. The first, a big question that always comes up with EVs, what about the grid? What role do utilities play in helping EVs deliver on their environmental promises?
Well, thanks, Chris. And just a little background on me. Aaron Dyer, senior manager in our program design team inside customer service at SoCal Edison. Basically, we're the team that creates all the things that try to get our customers to adopt clean technologies. So whether that's an EV incentive or a rate plan that kind of encourages the use of that, that's what we're focused on. And the reason that's important to us is, we're committed to achieving carbon neutrality by 2045. And electrification of vehicles is a big core component of that. I mean, our own analysis, looking at in our Countdown 2045 white paper suggests that by 2045, if California wants to meet its carbon neutrality goals, 90% of light-duty and medium-duty vehicles need to be electrified, and over 50% of the heavy-duty trucks need to be electrified. And the reason that works is because while these are zero-emission vehicles, we're charging them from an increasingly low-carbon grid. We've got a long way to go, but I kind of like looking at how much work the utility industry has done. I was born in 1984. Hate to say I'm 40 years old this year, but in the last 40 years, electricity use in this country has increased by 73%. But at the same time, emissions today are about the same as they were then. And they've clearly gone up, but in the last 18 years, we've reduced emissions on the grid by 36%, largely by deploying more and more renewable resources. So as an example, we just released our sustainability report. 52% of the electricity we delivered last year was carbon-free, which was up 7% from 2022, so already improving. And that means that our carbon intensity on our grid was 55% lower than the national average. So I think we see our role kind of as improving and including to decrease the carbon intensity of our grid, and then encouraging our customers to adopt clean energy technologies like EVs, like heat pumps and things. And in that way, we're trying to decarbonize bigger sectors of the economy.
Kevin, again, when talking about EVs, a lot of the focus is on CO2 and CO2 emissions, climate benefits of electric vehicles, but there's a lot of other potential environmental benefits of electric vehicles, especially in the commercial space. Can you talk a little bit about some of those other benefits that EVs can deliver?
Sure, Chris. Happy to. Thanks for having me here today. So I'm Kevin Tubbs. I work for Oshkosh Corporation. At Oshkosh Corporation, we make purpose-built specialty vehicles that help people do the work that we need to have done, all of us need to have done every day. Things like fire trucks, things like refuse vehicles, things like the new postal vehicle that'll be going out to a mailbox near you later this year. And when we design these vehicles and produce these vehicles, first, obviously, we heard a little bit earlier this morning about total cost of ownership, and they have to have a positive total cost of ownership. Our customers are also requiring that these vehicles are safer, that they are more ergonomic for the operators that we have. But then we get into the environmental benefits. And there are a number of environmental benefits. Of course, we talk about CO2. It's probably the most important, and it really is a game changer from a CO2 emission standpoint. But in our space, we also worry about diesel particulate emissions. So when these refuse vehicles, for example, that will be rolling out later this year, the electric refuse Volterra vehicle is replacing a diesel vehicle, you no longer have the amount of diesel particulate matter out into the environment that exposes our children, that exposes elderly people to diesel particulates that we know have associated health issues with them. Also, firemen that are working in fire stations that need to work on vehicles no longer have to breathe in diesel fumes from the vehicles that they have in their fire stations. Another area is noise, Chris. How many have been awoken in the morning to the sound of a refuse vehicle picking up your trash or your recyclables in the morning? If you have, like I have, it's nice that now the refuse vehicles won't have that noise issue that you have anymore going through your neighborhoods. And the third, we also make devices that help people work at height. So we have, for example, our Da Vinci scissor lift that our JLG business manufactures is an all-electric scissor lift. So you don't have hydraulics in the system anymore. So you don't have hydraulic leaks or spills. And it opens up a whole new area where we can now cleanly lift and have people work at height. So there's a lot of different environmental advantages in addition to the CO2 reductions.
Great. Pete, EVs are great for reducing the per mile impact of driving a car. But one of the best ways to reduce environmental impact is to get people out of cars and reduce car trips. Can you talk a little bit about the role that e-bikes and other micro-mobility products are playing in reducing car trips, reducing VMT, and the environmental benefits that provides?
Yeah, absolutely. So by way of introduction, my name is Pete Boudreaux, and so I'm a Vice President of Supply Chain and Operations for Rad Power Bikes. If you're not familiar with Rad Power Bikes, first I encourage you to test ride a bike outside today. We have some amazing models. Rad Power Bikes is Seattle-based. We are considered the largest e-bike brand in North America. We have well over 600,000 bikes on the road today in North America. And our focus and our mission when we started was 100% sustainability. And what we've really evolved to is we're trying to make transportation reliable and affordable for everyone as well. So to answer your question, how do we play a role in that, and how do bikes play a role in it? So I have an electric vehicle at home, private. The solution is not to take every vehicle and make it electric on the road. That cannot be sustainable in cities, because all you're going to do, while it has a huge impact environmentally, it doesn't help solve the congestion that is existing today. So what we do at RAD, along with many companies that are in the same industry as us, is we try to partner with legal entities, government agencies across the country, and help think through strategic ways that we can build a better infrastructure for cars. I was talking to another member on the panel today that I use my bike for everything. I go to the grocery store. I go to the big box grocery store where you can buy things in bulk. And we design our bikes where you can make them for commuting, for transportation, and that type of stuff. And that's what's going to have the big impact. When people start thinking differently about how do I live in a world of electrifying everything and congestion, but then how do I, a bike trip? And so the more bike lanes that are accessible is going to help. The more incentives, so for example, the state of Colorado and California as well is trying to do it. But the state of Colorado, and specifically the city of Denver, really took a big initiative last year with making a voucher program that made accessibility for bikes. And I remember the first day it opened, I sold a bike to a customer there who bought the car seat for the back of the bike, which our bike allows, came back the next day and told me how much his day was different when he took his child to drop off at school on a bike versus sitting in that car lane. And then he came back a month later when we were there and told our manager about how he's using it for everything. And the more we can get people thinking differently about transportation, you need cars for certain things, that's undoubtedly. But if most of your trips are within 3 to 5 miles of your home, odds are you can get there as fast on an electric bike. And if you're commuting, if you've never tried it before, try 1 day a week to commute on a bike and see how you feel when you arrive to work. It may have taken you a little bit longer, depending on the distance, but you have a different feeling inside because you've been outside, get a little exercise, but the electric vehicle part's making it accessible for everyone.
Great. Matthew, so not all EVs need to be plugged into the grid. Can you talk a little bit about the symbiotic relationship between EVs and distributed generation?
Sure. My name is Matthew Hofmann. I'm the CEO and founder of Living Vehicle. It's a electric recreational vehicle company designed to get you off grid, stay off grid. We're based in Santa Barbara, California. Been around for about 7 years, so we're in a different market. I'm going to respond to this as it relates to an RV-specific kind of market, purview. I thought about the topic of this panel today, and I don't want to say it's misguided, but electrifying everything. What are the implications environmentally of electrifying everything all at once? we're not doing that all at once. You know, this is a process. This is happening over time. You know, this is going to be decades in the making, and we will get there, but we're making great progress. The distributed energy kind of production concept that you're mentioning, I come from a unique standpoint on this, at least from the way that I view distributed energy. When I see the efficiency of vehicles coming about right now, there's not a big topic, not a lot of discussion when it comes to how efficient are these vehicles? How much range? I mean, there's a lot about range. Can you get 300, 400 miles? You know, that's the golden ticket right now. But when you talk about miles per gallon, that's all something we understand in the ICE world. Now, when you talk about miles per kilowatt, or what is the efficiency of what we're producing, reducing reliance on the grid, I think that's a major impact that really deserves a lot more discussion. And making these products across the board, whether we're building bikes or the you know, cars, vehicles, trucks, the efficiency of all of these, this plays into the supply and demand factor. So the less demand you have on the grid, the more efficient these vehicles are, the more that you can kind of produce and get further. Now, as it relates to living vehicle, what we're producing, our goal has always been a net zero, self-sustaining living solution. So we have a new product that we're releasing in the last couple weeks. It's called the Cyber Trailer. This is a self-sufficient vehicle that's designed to not only power itself, but to add power back to the grid or to the very vehicle that's towing. And I think this is an interesting paradigm shift where we can take this on a micro scale and look at the vehicles themselves as how do they not only reduce the energy demand on the grid, but contribute to produce power themselves. And I know not every bike can throw a bunch of solar panels on top of the roof and, you know, generate power for itself and other vehicles. But I think it's a mindset, it's a transition, and how do we reduce the overall reliance on the grid, get ourselves disconnect, and then get out doing those beautiful things we love doing, whether it's traveling in bikes or, you know, reducing the kind of the noise impact in our cities with garbage trucks. And I think these are all wonderful goals here. But, you know, collectively, getting out and reducing the impact, you know, in this micro scale. And you can also do this with homes, you know, putting solar panels on your homes. You know, we say 90% of the recharging is done while you're at home. And I think all of these are wonderful, contributing towards that greater solution.
Great. So, you know, EVs are great at reducing impact in their use phase, but let's talk a little bit more about manufacturing batteries. That always comes up in these discussions about the environmental impact. This is for the whole panel. We can start with maybe Kevin first. What can we be doing to reduce the impact in manufacturing and supply chain for EVs?
Well, there's a lot, I think, to be done still in our manufacturing locations. At Oshkosh, we've first looked at energy efficiency in our manufacturing, whether it's in our lighting to make sure that we're retrofitting and using high-efficiency LED lighting in our operations, to how we are using things like compressed air, things like heaters, anything we can do, our buildings to make sure that they're as tight as possible. So first is reducing the total overall energy we use there, and then how do we start to move toward more use of renewables at our facilities. Our large fire truck manufacturing facility in Wisconsin, we have a microgrid that we power using solar energy, and for our test facilities for our fire trucks. We're also starting to work with our suppliers and our supply chain. We use a lot of steel in our products, so we're working with our steel suppliers to work with them to make sure that they are becoming more efficient in how they're producing steel. We're working with our transporters to make sure that we're using good transportation methods and they're moving toward reducing their emissions. So I think it's both within our four walls and with our supply base to make sure that we're walking the walk in addition to talking the talk.
Pete, Matt, want to weigh in?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I go back to the very definition of sustainability to answer this question. In sustainability, the capacity to endure. When you're manufacturing something, I'd say the best thing you can do is create something locally. You know, build in the U.S. to whatever degree possible, and if that's not possible from an economic standpoint, you know, source supplies from the U.S. You know, locally sourced materials, things that do not take an ocean to cross to get to the location, reducing your dependence on you know, external sources or external nations. You know, and then you get to the local level. And that's proper manufacturing practices within. It's a holistic solution. So there's so many things you can do, whether it's recycled materials or just reducing the reliance on, even down to the individual, in the way that you build and having your exposure to chemicals, things of this nature, and all of this, as you're building vehicles, there's a lot that goes into that, and you really want to take very high awareness of the safety and security of those that are building all of these.
Back in 2022, I think when a lot of these stores are coming out as well, I think even in the dirtiest parts, the dirtiest grids in the country, I think any EV that was driven was essentially cleaner on a life cycle emissions basis after 50,000 miles than an equivalent ICE vehicle. So as the grid gets cleaner, that just gets better and better, right? So that's one thing we can keep doing, just increasing the deployment of renewable energy across the grid. But maybe more interesting to me and to the utility is, starting to use these EVs as a resource for the grid in a way to kind of soak up excess solar capacity and kind of make the grid cleaner as a whole, rather than making the vehicles cleaner. I mean, we had, I think earlier this week, even at 11:30 in the morning, which is not peak solar, there is 130% renewable, generation on the CAISO market. So there was 30% excess, solar generation from what we actually needed to use. So nothing's just sitting there taking it, but as you have all these batteries sitting around, they could soak those up. You could use them for your home or things later. I think that's another interesting way to think about how EVs can help decarbonize the grid in industry.
And what a tremendous opportunity we have.
100%.
When you look at the distributed electrical generation across the board, solar across homes, putting that into batteries within the vehicles themselves, plugging those in, and then distributing that power back.
And for us, we think about it as recyclable as well. That's a big part. Every one of our stores, every one of our dealers, we enable recycling through sensible partners that help with this. But you also think about it differently when I think about bikes. I ran into a customer in Santa Barbara. He had put over 60,000 miles on a bike. Same battery, bike. He started commuting, and he was like, this just changed everything for me. And I'm like, when the time comes and you need to replace your battery, bring it here, we'll recycle it, we'll get you a new one. So I think that's a key thing too. When I think about a car, there's no recyclability in gas. You know what I mean? It's right out into the air. And so I think that's a big thing that we have to think about is how is it's renewable energy, but it's also recyclable products, and being sensible about what happens with that as well.
Aaron, can the grid handle it?
Oh, yeah, clearly EVs are going to add a lot of load to the grid, right? It's going to probably double the electrical load on the system in the next 20 years. Now, the good news is we're going to have a lot more renewable energy on the grid, by then. But getting it deployed is going to be, challenging. Admittedly, we serve 15 million customers here in Southern California, and our first, priority is making sure that the grid is reliable and ready. But we're working actively with our regulators and other state agencies. We're really having to rethink about a lot of the ways we've traditionally deployed the grid. Rather than kind of waiting for load to show up, the speed of the deployment, customers choosing the EVs, choosing devices, it's faster than our typical planning process has kept up with. So we're working with our regulators trying to change those rules, or trying to change the way we design things and accept things so we can proactively build the grid out. We're even considering things like, where we know we might have issues. It's called our Power Service Availability Initiative, essentially bringing big portable batteries to a customer site. Maybe they're ahead of our construction time, but we can still bring power to them to kind of mitigate maybe our build-out times, trying to make sure that we're not the bottleneck in this process. So first and foremost, trying to make sure that we're reliable, and then trying to work inside our regulatory agencies to make sure that we're doing this in a way that keeps up with the pace of demand.
All right, we're almost out of time. Lightning round for everyone on the panel. Start with you, Kevin. What do you see as the biggest opportunity to continue to improve the environmental performance of EVs?
I think probably continuing to educate the people that are using our products, telling the story. We've heard earlier this morning about how, and you just mentioned, Aaron, how even in the dirtiest grid, these products are environmentally beneficial. How do we continue to tell that story? How do we continue to make people understand the importance of moving toward an electrified economy?
40 seconds left. I'm going to get one word: efficiency. Make it simple.
Unlocking the ability of EVs to allow deeper renewable penetration on the grid.
And for us, it goes back to our mission, which is exactly what they've mentioned it's got to be affordable. The vehicle, the mechanism, the transportation unit, or whatever it is, it's got to be efficient, reliable, and there's got to be a system set up to support that in network. But it's got to be that's the biggest thing I hear is affordability. Like, people want to do it, but can they afford it? We've got to find ways to make it affordable for consumers as well.
That's all our time we have. Thank you very much.